What is up, guys? I got the winner of the chain guide. That is going to be going to B-Mountain Bike, that subscriber. So hit me up. You got a awesome brand new one-up chain guide coming your way free of charge. The two helmets are going to be picked in about a week and a half. So once again, if you're not already subscribed, make sure to do that and you will be entered to win the raffle for the helmet. Once again, B-Mountain Bike, you are the winner for the chain guide. Anyways, thanks for your patience. On to the video. What's up, guys? Today we are going to be talking about the frustrating career of Finn Iles. Now, before I get into that, I want to make it very clear that I'm a huge fan of his. I find him to be one of the most genuinely likable riders on the World Cup circuit. Every interview he does, he's just enthusiastic, excited, and upbeat. So I am a huge fan of his. However, with that being said, today's video is about the reality that as a World Cup downhill fan myself, and many of you included, his career thus far, and I should preface it with thus far, it could change, but his career up to this point has significantly underperformed expectations. That's what today's video is about, and let's get into it. So Finn Iles has now been racing in the elite category in the World Cup downhill races for 7 seasons, and thus far, and it's still hard to believe even when I say it, he has only managed to win 1 race. That was in 2022, his home track, Mount St. Anne. It was one of the coolest races I've ever seen. It was really emotional. Everybody was just over the moon for him. He's just a fan favorite. He's great for the sport, and it was so cool to see him get that first win. But for some of you watching that perhaps don't remember when he got started, the idea of the prodigy, and he was and still is, I believe, a prodigy, the idea of him only managing to secure 1 elite World Cup win over the course of 7 seasons in the elite class would be unfathomable. Now, when Finn Iles really jumped onto the scene, it was in 2014 in Crankworx Whistler. There was the popular whip-off contest that happens every year there, and a young prodigy Grom named Finn Iles was deemed too young to participate in the event. Now, the people in the know were well aware that this kid had an exceptional ability on the bike, and that's before you even talk about his whip ability. Finn Iles was one of those early sort of hot up-and-coming Groms. He was kind of the Jackson Goldstone before Jackson Goldstone. So there was a petition to let Finn compete in the whip-off in Crankworx 2014. He goes and wins it, and I still remember the photo. At that point, he was on Trek. I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive, but I'm pretty sure it was like a blue Trek session, and I still remember the social media and the various bike magazines really leaning into this awesome picture of this 14-year-old future racer, because he was already talking about wanting to race, and literally his first professional event, even though it was not a race event, he won. 14 years old, competing against the best of the best, and for many people, that's when they first heard of Finn Iles. Shortly thereafter, he was picked up by Specialized. He was teammates with Loic Bruni. They pretty much became really close, great friends, and he has remained on that team since then. Now, this kind of is a good segue into one of the challenges that, in my opinion, Finn Iles has faced in managing to perform at the level that I would imagine himself and all of us fans were expecting, and that is this. Unfortunately, as is often the case in many other sports, Finn Iles was the best guy on the day, not named Loic Bruni. If you take Loic Bruni out of the conversation for the past, let's say, 8 years, Finn Iles would have won a lot more races. The first challenge that Finn Iles has faced is simply competing alongside and being the teammate of one of the greatest racers to ever do it. He might go on to be the greatest. The dude is a tactician. He has got every box checked. He's got that incredible top end speed. He is possibly the best in terms of bike setup and race prep. And the dude is an absolute machine. And there's really only one way that you're going to be able to beat him. And this is another good segue into the second part. So the first is he simply happens to be racing in an era where after Gwyn's domination kind of left off, and it's funny because Gwyn was to Loic what Loic is to Finn. It's just you're competing against a generational talent even though you might be an absolute prodigy, the guy that you're racing against is just a tick or two above you. Well, Gwyn was that to Loic, and Loic is that to Finn. So with that being said, the second part, in my opinion, that has led to Finn Iles not being able to crack the code that is Loic Bruni is this. There's only really one way to beat Loic Bruni, and that is because you are not going to out downhill Loic Bruni. He is so intelligent at the game of World Cup racing. He is so able to sort of figure out what he has to do, when he has to do it. He is so skilled at minimizing risk, understanding what tracks suit him, what tracks don't. He is just an absolute machine. And it's funny because that was a term that he used to use for Gwyn. Well, Bruni is now the machine in the field. A handful of the racers that have been able to beat him are able to do so for pretty much one reason: top end speed. One of the reasons Amaury Pierron has been able to beat Loic Bruni is because he has that freak of nature top end speed. We really saw that last year at Ligier and Val di Sole, winning both by, I believe, 5 seconds in Val di Sole and right around 5 seconds in Ligier. And for any World Cup fans, and many of you watching are obviously World Cup fans, that's just unheard of. Like, that's completely unprecedented. Yeah, Jackson Goldstone won by that margin at Mount St. Anne the year before, but that is just a complete one-off anomaly. Finn Iles won in 2022 at Mount St. Anne by 0.2 of a second. That was the margin that separated him from Laurie Greenland in second. So when you have a rider like Jackson Goldstone, who was also able to beat Loic Bruni twice in 2023, his debut season, or Amaury Pierron, that is able to just deliver these runs that are just a couple notches above what Loic Bruni can, or even more importantly, is willing to do, that's the only recipe that works. You have to just go harder. You have to find that next gear, that next level of intensity and speed, and you have to push yourself harder than Loic Bruni is willing to. And that's why Amaury Pierron is really one of the few racers over the past however many years that has been able to beat Loic Bruni and has been able to actually win World Cup overalls, is because on those days, and it's not every race, this is the other challenge with Amaury Pierron, is he's not as good at the game of World Cup racing as Loic. I'm sure Amaury Pierron would even admit this. Loic Bruni is just, he's so skilled at sort of the methodology, but he has that top end speed. This gets us back to Finn Iles. He's an incredible rider. He simply does not have that top end speed of a Amaury Pierron or a Jackson Goldstone. He just doesn't. He has not demonstrated, at least yet, an ability to pull off a race run and to come down a big time gap ahead of his competitors. And when you're racing against Loic Bruni, that is really the only formula you have to win. Winning one race is incredible. Dakota Norton, Lucas Shaw, and Bernard Kerr are all still looking for their first World Cup win. So just winning one World Cup is absolutely incredible. But when you start talking about the expectations that I'm sure he himself has, he is one of the most talented riders on the bike. That is very clear. But it's got to be said that his career so far has been kind of challenging. And this leads into another interesting point, and that's what I kind of sum up with the intangibles. Benoit Coulange is possibly the best example of what I'm talking about when I say the intangibles. When you look at Benoit Coulange next to Finn Iles, pretty much anybody that sort of knows the sport would assume after a few minutes of watching them ride that Finn Iles should be faster. Would I say Finn Iles is likely more naturally talented on the bike than Benoit? I would say yes. Is he more stylish on the bike? Definitely. I mean, I would say it's not even a debate. Definitely, in my opinion, he's more stylish than Benoit. Guess what? Benoit Coulange has managed to win 2 World Cup races to Finn Iles 1. And this was with none of the hype, none of the huge excitement, the industry expectations. He was just that slow, gradual grind kind of journeyman that managed to, even though he didn't necessarily have the ritz and the glamour and the hype and the sort of incredible style, and he's not, for example, winning whip-offs when he's 14 years old, he has that ability. that when race day arrives, when he's going up to the top of the mountain, especially in wet conditions, he is a just freak of nature in wet conditions. He might be one of the best. He can deliver. And it's interesting because there's lots of riders that look incredible and they have all the skill in the world. And you look at him and you go, this dude's going to be a World Cup title overall winner. And then they go to a World Cup and they can't even qualify. I've seen it many, many times. And it has to do with this, again, intangible. Being able to deliver the run when the time calls for it. You're heading up to that starting gate at whatever, time, 12:30, and you got to deliver that run with all the expectations, all the pressure. Anybody that's raced downhill knows the pressure. And even if when you're an amateur rider, the pressure comes from just wanting to perform. Even as an amateur racer, there's a lot of effort in the training, the bike prep, the financial commitment, the driving, the track. It's a lot of work that goes into it. And one mistake in your whole weekend, it is kind of over. That's what makes this sport so uniquely challenging. It's what makes it one of the most sort of mentally difficult sports possibly in the world. There's other sports that are more challenging for different reasons, but in terms of the pressure, downhill World Cup racing might eclipse everything else. And this is where we get into, for whatever reason, Finn Iles, when the race run is there, when he's got to deliver, he struggles to get the best out of himself. He kind of overrides. There was many, many years where he would crash just one race after another. And it's tough because his teammate is one of the best of all time at doing it. Loic Bruni, when the pressure is on, when he needs to perform, when it's it comes down to this run, the dude is an animal. He can and this is the case with many different sports and many different generational talents and sort of the riders or athletes or whatever that are able to really establish themselves on kind of the Mount Rushmore of the greatest of all time. Oftentimes, the biggest separating sort of factor is not necessarily their skill. It's their ability to perform when the lights are the brightest, when the pressure is on, when they have to get it done. Loic Bruni is a just machine. There is, in my opinion, nobody that has done it better, that is more complete. And for Finn Iles, and honestly, listen, Loic Bruni is pretty much beating everybody else in the field. So I know this video has been kind of me singling out Finn Iles, but Loic Bruni is pretty much clowning everybody. He's just so good that there's been very few riders that are able to beat him. So anyways, that was a long rant and explanation as to why I find that, man, I love Finn Iles. I think he's still young. There's still a lot of time for him to go on a run and win more races, and I am all for it. He's one of my favorite athletes in the sport. He just seems like such a nice, energetic dude. I have never seen an interview with Finn Iles where he was anything but just courteous and passionate and positive. I'm not sure you could find a person to say something negative about him. He's just an undeniably likable dude. He's still kicking butt, one of the best riders in the world. It's a tough sport. That's why we love it, but I want to see him get another win this year. It's possible. That's part of the sport, man. It's so difficult. Ask Dakota Norton, ask Lucas Shaw, Bernard Kerr, among many others, how difficult it is to just get one win. And yeah, they'll let you know that, dude, it's one of the most difficult sports in the world. That's why we like it. But let me know, what is your guys' opinion? Do you remember the 2014 whip-off? I still, clear as day, I remember there was so many bike magazines that used, I'm pretty sure, because I'll include the picture in this, but I didn't even look up the picture. But if I remember, he was on a blue Trek session with black letters. I'll see if I'm right, but I still remember, I'm pretty sure he was wearing RockShox socks too. It'll be funny if the picture corroborates that, but I just remember it was used in so many advertisements, and yeah, it was just such a cool story. But anyways, let me know what you think, and yeah, I love hearing you guys' comments. You guys are as passionate about this as I am. It's cool. It's just, I love it. I love cycling, downhill in particular, but just all of it. Racing, the bikes, you name it. But let me know what you guys think, and hope you enjoy the video.